The Lord be with you. Reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus and his disciples set out for the villages of Caesarea Philippi. Along the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter said to him in reply, "You are the Christ." Then he warned them not to tell anyone about him. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and rise after 3 days. He spoke this openly. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. At this he turned around and, looking at his disciples, rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan! You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do." He summoned the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "Whoever wishes to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake and that of the gospel will save it." The Gospel of the Lord.
Get behind me, Satan. Pretty strong statement. Could you imagine Jesus saying that to you? Calling you Satan? After all, if he could say it to his best friend Peter, the one who was going to be the rock of the church because of his stability in the faith, the one who would be the apostle who would be the first pope, get behind me, Satan, he could say it to anyone. There's a story of a married woman who went out shopping one day. When she returned home, she brought with her this beautiful dress that she had found. She showed the beautiful dress to her husband, who almost had a stroke when he saw the price tag and how much it cost. And she agreed with him that it was a very expensive dress. But she said she tried it on and she looked so beautiful in it that she couldn't resist the temptation to buy it. Her husband told her, "You should have said, 'Get behind me, Satan.'" She said, "That's exactly what I said." And Satan said, "You look fabulous from back here, too." Figure with such a heavy line we could use a little light humor. So Jesus isn't just telling us today, "Get behind me, Satan," but he is clearly asking us, "Who do you say that I am?" Who do you say that Jesus is? That's the final blunt question that Jesus gives Peter and his disciples in today's gospel. No more hiding behind the popular speculations they had to answer for themselves. Worst of all, their answer couldn't be just an opinion. What they said now would profess their level of commitment. After all, they were expecting the Messiah to be a great king and ruler, and Jesus was nothing like that. So he asked them that question, "Who do you say that I am?" Their answer would explain just how far they would be willing to go for Jesus. And the answer that we give today is the same. How do we explain to people who Jesus is? We might tell children, Jesus is the Son of God. That's probably the best we can make it for kids. But when you think about it, it's rather an incomplete answer. Who is Jesus? In today's gospel, Jesus reveals to his disciples what must happen to him. He must be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, be killed, and praise God, after 3 days he would raise. Of course, Jesus' disciples are disturbed by this revelation because they think of Jesus as one of the good guys, the Messiah, the great ruler. They've just described him in the same category as John the Baptist, Elijah, and all those great and wonderful prophets. He can't possibly be one of those people who would be an outcast, finally be executed as a criminal. Now they're acting like they don't even know him. They're treating Jesus after all this time as if he's a stranger. Jesus is simply asking for their help. He knows what's going to happen. He needs understanding, friendship, and empathy, and instead his friends are treating him like a stranger. When you think about it, the common scenario when you meet a stranger asking for help is just one of those moments. Think if you left church today and there was somebody out there holding one of those cardboard signs and it simply said, "Who do you say Jesus is?" How would you answer that? There are many other opportunities for narrowing the divide we feel in those situations. We can begin by acknowledging the other person's humanity. Jesus was human, but he was also divine. Any human being also has that presence of Christ in them. We see them, we could say hello, wish them a good day. We might even choose to share some food and clothing with them if we have something to spare. We can give our excess in more organized ways as well, donating items we no longer need to people who can use them, St. Vincent de Paul and other services, or financially supporting local organizations that provide those services for people who need help. And we can work to build a more supportive community by voting this year for people and policies that make a priority of taking care of people at every level of society, as well as organizing with our neighbors to advocate justice for all people, that every person will be treated as if they were Christ himself, saying, "Who do you say that I am?" So this week when Jesus is asking, "Who do you say that I am?" he's also asking if we recognize him in others, even the stranger we might meet on the street that could repulse us. This week is also Catechetical Sunday. We're going to recognize after communion those people who help us to recognize Christ in our midst. Teachers, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, anyone who makes Christ present to others is a catechist. So in a way, every one of us gathered here this morning is a catechist. We're all helping each other answer that question. Who do you say Jesus is? When we pray, when we gather like this for Mass, whenever we share our faith with someone else, we're making Christ known, helping others to recognize him in our midst. When we spend time encountering Christ and allow him to enlighten and renew us, our entire way of living will be our final answer to who we say Jesus is.